What happens when two dudes, one a retired Navy SEAL commander in Colorado Springs, and the other a hippie meditation teacher in New York City, get together to discuss living mindfully? That's a great question, because we don't know what will happen either. Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with co-hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Each week, we take an authentic dive into how mindfulness continually impacts our lives, deepens our relationships, and allows us to be emotionally alive. We filter all of our conversations through the man box, where we unpack how as men we are expected to act in society, how fighting the authentic human experience is exhausting and damaging, and how mindfulness can help. Now, on to the show. Hey, hello everybody. Welcome back to Men Talking Mindfulness. Today we are episode 10. I'm Will Schneider over here in New York City. There's my brother from another mother, Jon McCaskill, over there in Colorado Springs.
What's up, brother? How are you?
Yeah, good. How are you? We have a packed show today, everybody. We're going to unpack emotional awareness and support. In this episode, be expected, we're going to learn about emotional awareness, emotional intelligence, how to develop them, and also the importance of a support network. How are we doing today, John?
Oh, man. Well, I've got a frog in my throat, apparently, but I'm feeling pretty good other than that. No, I'm super excited about today's episode. It is so applicable in what's going on in today's society, but it's also just applicable in just every day for everyone. So emotional awareness and the importance of that support network. So we definitely want to get into that. Prior to that, though, I've got some announcements to share, some that we've shared in recent past. And first off, we're going to start with our partnership with MovementRx and Dr. Teresa Larson and their team out there in San Diego. Teresa's actually moving to Colorado here in the next couple of weeks, but if you're seeing this on one of their feeds, that's why you're seeing it on their feed, is because we have a new partnership with MovementRx. And together, MovementRx and Men Talking Mindfulness, we've partnered to offer a practical way to learn meditation and mindfulness along with the movement side. So that's a lot of what Teresa and her team teaches. But we're also going to have Will in there teaching the yoga. So that's fantastic. We're going to have that full movement and mindfulness experience, the M2 experience. And that's a new announcement. That partnership is there, but the movement and mindfulness experience, bringing Will in, that's new. And that said, I want to show our first commercial, actual commercial that we're showing on the show, and hopefully this works out. So we'll see. Here we go.
Let's go for it.
Because life is so chaotic and can be very messy, the longest trip you can ever take is from your head to your heart. My father told me this at many times in my life. That trip is actually the emotional and physical connection that we have with ourselves when we're in these chaotic moments, with our environment. My name is Dr. Teresa Larson. I'm a former Marine, pro athlete, now doctor of physical therapy.
And I'm Jon McCaskill, retired Navy SEAL commander turned mindfulness and meditation teacher. The two of us have blazed this trail. It took us years to do so, to get a feeling of peace emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And we want to help you blaze that trail in just a fraction of the time. And if you want to take your own journey and learn how to do this faster, check out our Mindfulness and Movement Experience.
All right, there it was. First commercial actually worked out, so that's good. So hey, we'll be sharing that experience link here in the comments shortly. We've also lately been reading a great new book. It's the Mindfulness Experience right here by Keith Fiveson. Keith is actually one of our audience members and a Movement and Mindfulness Experience alum. And the Mindfulness Experience, this book right here, it breaks down 8 strategies to improve and maintain optimal wellness and health. And it's really interesting because 5 of the strategies are strategies to work from the inside out, and then the remaining 3 strategies are ways to work from the outside in, and those 8 combined are what help you to live that optimal health and wellness. So Keith Fiveson, this book is available on Amazon, right now. You can buy it in both Kindle and paperback format. It is the Mindfulness Experience: 8 Strategies to Live Life Now by Keith Fiveson. Keith, great book. Thanks for sharing it with us, and we're excited to be promoting it here on the show. And then finally, next few days, or the last few days, that you can be able to buy our Men Talking Mindfulness shirts right here, like I've got on. And there you go. And so the shirts and hoodies, and we've got both men's and women's on the site. It's going to be shutting down at the end of day on Monday, on Labor Day, so September 6th. So get your shirts now, and I'll go ahead and post that link in the comments here shortly as well, after our grounding practice. So let's get into our opening grounding practice like we do on every show. I'm going to go ahead and kick my flip-flops off. Got them right here. And now my feet are bare on the ground. I like to do that because it really helps to literally ground me. So if it's safe to do so, please just go ahead and pause. And if you're comfortable doing so, close your eyes. And let's begin with 3 deep breaths together. And as we do so, pay attention to the physical sensation of breathing, the air passing your nostrils as you breathe in, if you can breathe in through your nose. And as you breathe out through your mouth. We'll breathe in nice and deep. Begin by breathing out all your air. Breathe in deep through your nose. And nice and slow out through your mouth, paying attention to the physical sensations. In deep through your nose. And out nice and slow through your mouth. One more. Deep in through your nose. And let it go nice and slow. Slow, slow, easy, easy, easy. Now just breathe naturally. And bring your awareness to your emotions. That's what today's show is on. So we want to be aware of our emotions. How are you feeling emotionally? And don't feel a need to judge anything. Just take note of it. Are you feeling happy? Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling sad, frustrated, stressed? Are you feeling lighthearted? Just be aware of that. And if you do have an emotion, note if it is a secondary emotion or is something else causing that feeling of anger, of stress. Is there another emotion there? Sometimes our emotions are paired with other emotions or caused by other emotions. And again, don't feel a need to judge it, just be aware of it. Right here, right now, in this moment, what are you feeling emotionally? And part of our grounding comes with identifying those emotions and the potential other emotions that are causing it, and just being aware of that. Right here and right now. We'll wrap it up with one deep cleansing breath together, and we're going to get into the show. Begin by breathing out all your air. Breathe in deep through your nose. And relax. Now bring some movement back into your body. As we talked about our partnership with MovementRx, let's do some movement. And move your neck around, maybe roll your shoulders around, and open up your eyes if they're closed. And here we are, brother. Man, talking mindfulness.
We're back, Jon.
You fall asleep there?
Pretty deep there, Jon. No. I kind of started to forget about the nerves of the show a little bit, use the breath, and then I'm also telling myself, trust the preparation, be confident, you know what I mean? Like, and just kind of be, maybe the presence of James Nestor, right? We talked about, he's just so calm and so relaxed, and we've done the work, Jon. So, you bring up a great point in the meditation, Jon. about emotional awareness. A lot of people talk about emotional intelligence, right? But underneath that, in order to achieve and attain and begin to work on and practice emotional intelligence, right, we need to have emotional awareness. And it's not just you talk about those like the surface feelings, right? But there's usually something a little bit deeper.
Right.
So again, let's start with the definition, right? Let's define emotional awareness. And I have a couple things here to say about that. Emotional awareness is being able to identify the emotions you experience at any given time. Okay. And I'll also say a quote here. And this comes from a great article that I was accessing and reading from the Harvard Business Review. And said, it's been shown that when people don't acknowledge and address their emotions, they display lower well-being and more physical symptoms of stress like headaches. There's a high cost to avoiding our feelings. On the flip side, having the right vocabulary, and that's key. We're going to work on that vocabulary today. Having the right vocabulary allows us to see the real issue at hand, to take a messy experience, understand it more clearly, and build a roadmap to address the problem. This is what emotional awareness will help us to do, right? But how do we get there? So where does that bring you, Jon? Just hearing that definition.
Well, I mean, it brings me to our overlap. Men Talking Mindfulness, right? We're here to talk about mindfulness and the importance of mindfulness and how that ties into your awareness, right? We've talked about sensory awareness. We've talked about other forms of awareness, but your emotional awareness is critical. Your emotional awareness is critical to your own health and well-being. And we've talked about, on episodes of leadership, the emotional awareness is critical to being a positive and effective leader, both the emotional awareness of your own emotions and the emotional awareness of what's going on with your people, your team, your colleagues, and sometimes even your seniors, knowing what they are going through. It's tied to very closely to compassion. So that's what runs through my head initially with that definition and what you've said so far, man.
Yeah, well, I mentioned Dale Carnegie a lot. His quote, it's like, realize that when you're dealing with people, you're not dealing with, you're dealing with not, thought beings, right, but emotional beings. This is this is very important for us because, if that's what we are at our core, right, and if we begin to develop emotional literacy, emotional agility, and eventually more emotional intelligence for our own self, right, again, how effective we're going to be in leadership situations or in our home, in order to be aware of our own feelings and therefore the feelings of others. And by having that awareness, Jon, we can really begin to, like they say here, to build a roadmap to address the problem, right? And really what the problem is, which is super key. So, there's three approaches here to developing and that emotional awareness. And the first one is broadening our vocabulary, which we're going to bring up a little chart here and talk about that in a moment. And then also, it's not even just, it is obviously important to have that emotional vocabulary and that literacy, but also noting the intensity of an emotion, right? This goes deeper into getting to know ourselves on this deeper level, and also through practice. Like none of this stuff is going to happen with practice. And another way to really get deeper in and develop more of that literacy is to write things out. So here we go. Here's our list of emotions, going beyond the obvious, right? This is another thing, we have we think it's just like, oh, I'm angry, right? But really, what is it? Is it everything? Am I always angry? Is angry actually how I'm feeling? There's also the most prominent ones they say in this article and in this, and if you can't see this, just listen for a moment. Anger, sad, anxious, hurt, embarrassed, and happy. Right. And there's also a whole list of positive emotions that are beyond happy, like joy and, compassion and on all those types of all the love and all those types of things. But just look at which one should we pick here, Jon, and kind of look a little deeper into.
Yeah. Well, I think one that is often a secondary emotion is that first one, anger. Right. And I know we've done whole episodes on that, but yeah, let's get into anger and some of the other emotions that can drive that. So let's start there.
Yeah, so we have, we can be grumpy. I mean, that's not the same thing as anger, right? Grumpy is one thing, anger is another, right? Frustration, annoyed, right? Defensive. I think that's interesting, right? As a
Yeah.
kind of like related to anger. Impatient, right? I mean, that's very different than anger, right? I mean, and it's very specific, like someone that's impatient versus somebody that's angry. If you have that emotional literacy, you'll be able to kind of see the difference. And then also, it's not even just how they're feeling, but also a lot of these emotions we're talking about drive our actions, right? So this is also helping us become aware of aware of our own feelings. We can be aware of our own actions. It could be, say someone that's impatient might be, tapping, their hand or twiddling their thumbs or doing some sort of activity that kind of expresses that emotional feeling of impatience. Going down the deeper list here of emotions that are related to anger are, disgust, offended, and irritated is another one. And this is not a comprehensive list at all, but just imagine taking anger and understanding it to be all of these other, or to get more specific about what the feeling is. It's not just angry on the surface, but to be grumpy or frustrated, impatient or annoyed or disgusted, like we talked about.
And what's really interesting is the overlap between this list of emotions and how so many of them are intertwined. And what you mentioned, somebody may be tapping their hand or something. There's a lot that's said with our verbal communication, but there's so much that is said with our body language. And
Yes.
if we're really paying attention when we are communicating with people, we're not just paying attention to the words that they're saying, but also what they're conveying with their body language. And a lot of that is in this list of emotions. And if you're just listening and not watching, you're listening later when this comes out in podcast form, across the top of the vocabulary is, like Will covered, angry, sad, anxious, hurt, embarrassed, and happy. And then underneath that are a whole list of different sub emotions, if you will, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, or more specific emotions, really.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, more specific. But again, I want to come back to how so many of these are tied together. In that Harvard Business Review article that we reviewed prior to the show, where this is, I think, pulled from, the one woman in the beginning of the article is angry, but then when you peel back that onion, she's embarrassed. She's sad, and she's also a little bit anxious about what may happen if she fails again. In this article we reviewed, this woman was in a board meeting, and a man was continually kind of ridiculing her past failures, and she started getting angry. Well, she started getting angry because she was embarrassed about those past failures. She was defensive because of what this guy was doing, and then she was anxious. And that all kind of fed into this feeling of anger. But here in this chart that we're showing, it shows that those are separate but kind of intertwined. And it's just interesting to see how much can be tied into anger in and of itself.
Well, I mean, that's a great example. And you use the word embarrassment, or embarrassed, which is part of this, this list we have here. Again, it's not a completely, and I see Noble Gibson here, like he has a whole podcast on developing EQ, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for dropping in here, Noble, and commenting as well. And he has a great podcast, so please go over there in order to enhance some of these skills for sure. But to go a little further down and understand, another one of these, we're not going to do every single one, but to be embarrassed, it's just like, in that example, I forget the woman's name. Is it? Anyway, that woman in the article you just talked about, like, so being embarrassed, to go even deeper, like if you really begin to question yourself and begin to develop more of this emotional literacy and really get to know your feelings on a deeper level, embarrassed might be isolated, right? It could be you're very self-conscious, right? Or even lonely. You feel, in that situation, she might have felt inferior, to everyone else in the room because of those failures, guilty, ashamed, right? Repugnant, or even pathetic, which is like, wow, imagine that feeling. And we're confused, right? And these are just all, again, getting more specific about our emotions are going to help us, again, to develop that roadmap right? To have to really address the problem that's at hand. And this will help us to develop more of this emotional agility, which is so incredibly important.
I love that term, the emotional agility. Yeah. That is when we're reading again, that emotional agility. That's a great way of putting it. We have to be agile in our emotions and aware, and the two are tied together inextricably, much like the emotions are. So yeah, I'm going to stop sharing this and bring your smiling face back up.
Hey, Jon.
Good to see you, bud.
Yeah, well, think about that word agility, right? It's just like it gives us, it gives us options, because we can, like, when I think of agility, I think of something physical, right? Where it's like, I have several different options because I have developed the agility physically. So imagine if you have the ability emotionally through more literacy, in order to become more aware of yourself on a deeper level and more specific level we talked about. And again, how is that going to translate into more emotional awareness of other people? And then how is that going to translate into, which we'll get into eventually, developing that emotional intelligence, which is kind of the actionable phase of emotional literacy and emotional awareness. But they say here, emotional agility, we often mask for deeper feelings that we could and should describe in more nuanced and precise ways, which was kind of talked about. So what we develop greater levels of emotional agility is a critical capacity that enables us to interact more successfully with ourselves and the world, right? That's what we mean by emotional agility. Again, it's like, and we get into that whole idea of reacting versus responding, which is super important as well. And just having this, becoming more emotionally aware and therefore not reactive or triggered by our emotions, but just being aware. And the more we practice these things, we can begin to implement mindfulness practices that help us to get back to neutral, get back and help us to create a more centered and focused mind and body. And that can really change the environment and the situation, any place that we are.
Right. Right. And I love what you said there in defining emotional agility, the capability that enables us to interact more successfully with the world, but also with ourselves. And how often do you think about interacting with yourself, right? I don't think we ever think about that. You just kind of think that you're this closed system and everything's just happening, and you don't ever think about really interacting with yourself, almost like having a conversation with yourself. Right. And how important is it to have that interaction and have those quote unquote conversations with yourself, so that you are aware of what you're feeling and how what you're feeling affects others, so that you can interact successfully with others, with the world. And I think that's a very important distinction there, is having that emotional agility, but then also having that interaction with yourself. So I love that. And go ahead.
No, Noble brings up a great point here. It's very difficult to be emotionally agile when you have a limited self-awareness and self-management skills, right? And I just want to take a little segue into, we oh God, where's my book? We did a whole episode on reinventing masculinity. Right. And we really begin to introduce the concept to our community about confined masculinity, right? Which is we're just typically rewarded for, being the protector, the provider, and
conqueror.
And the conqueror, right? That's it, right? Those are, and those, each one of those, I guess badges, if you will, come with a very limited very limited emotional skill set. Sure. Right. And if we're just stuck in, of being anger, and we have like we have a list of our prior episodes that kind of help us develop more of this literacy. Because I think it was season 1, Jon, that we went deeper into, we really had a whole series on feelings and feelings and feelings and feelings. But like, if you're a man out there that is in this confined masculine state, you're really limiting your ability to become more emotionally aware, and therefore you're limiting the potential that you have with yourself, right? But also with the world, with your work, with your family, with your friends, and in any situation or environment.
your sense of fulfillment, right? I mean, like
Right.
if you are living in that confined masculinity, and we don't want to use the term toxic masculinity because we know how inflammatory that is, but just confined masculinity. So
Yeah.
literally, if you think about a box, if you will, and putting yourself in that box, and the only emotions or only roles that you can play in the confined masculinity are the provider, protector, and conqueror. You can't be a nurturer. You can't be an adventurer. You can't be
Caretaker.
compassionate. You can't be a caretaker. You can't be right. And think about all those emotions that you are depriving yourself of, and even sadness. Right? You can't be sad because you have to be this stoic provider, stoic conqueror, stoic protector, and you truly are confining yourself. And that's what the emotional awareness, if you're able to be aware of it, that will help you to get out of that confining box, that man box that we talk about so often.
Yeah.
It will allow you to experience more life.
It's almost like a toxic loop in the sense of like, if I'm only allowed to express anger, frustration, dominance, those kind of emotions, it's like, the inability for me, if I'm putting myself, in imagination in that man box, it's like, I would feel extremely frustrated if I can only be angry, or I can only be aggressive, or only show dominance, or be prideful or something like that. And it's a limited skill set, right? Which just kind of like feeds into itself. So I'm always in this constant loop of only feeling this way, and like the frustration that I feel by only, you might not be aware of those frustrations. Like this is like a big thing for us. It's like, again, developing this emotional literacy helps us to break out of this confined masculinity, gets us out of the man box, and really begins to see and explore and be with a spectrum of emotions that allows us to be, like I say in the intro, that allows us to be emotionally alive. Yes. Right. And if we're emotionally alive, then how can we be, we're just going to be more, like, we're just going to live more fulfilling life, because we have a hold of what our humanity is, which is we're at this emotional core, we're emotional beings. So this is just so incredibly important. Not just, we talked about the agility, but just that basic, simple awareness just helps us to be more fulfilling lives, like you said earlier.
Yeah, more fulfilling and more authentic, right? Like if we're going through life and all that we're experiencing, or the roles that we're playing, are the provider, protector, conqueror, and that's all we're allowing ourselves to live, we're wearing a mask, right? We're wearing this fake mask. One, that takes a lot of energy to wear that mask, and that mask only. And then two, you're not being authentic. So the people around you don't get to know the real you. They don't know what you truly need, who you truly are. And I know we're going to talk about support networks here shortly, but if you are not being authentic, you can't support others as they need it, and you can't get the support that you need. And sometimes if you're not being authentic, you may not even know the support that you need. And once you start kind of coming out of that armor that we wear, or that mask, you take that mask off, then you look in this, metaphorical mirror, and you see yourself as you truly are. You may be able to see what you truly need. And as you know what you truly need, then you're able to ask for it and receive it. And as you receive it, then you are actually able to have that, again, more fulfilling life, more real, the true human experience, like we talk about in the intro as well. So yeah, it's emotional awareness, taking that mask off, being your true authentic self. It's all tied together.
Well, keeping that mask on, I'll label this kind of like bro culture, right?
I
have a line, it's like, yeah, bro. But whatever, if I'm limited in this, if I have this confined masculine set of emotional values, and that's all I can express, what are my conversations going to be, Jon? It's going to be about anger, dominance, aggression, sexual conquest, right? And that's all I'm ever really going to, like, that's really what I'm allowed to talk about. That's really it, because if you go into like, oh, I'm not, I'm feeling embarrassed, which requires vulnerability. That requires a lot of vulnerability, which is another feeling as well, which is a very deep feeling that we experience sometimes right here on the show very often, Jon. But it's as an example, right? And inspiration, hopefully, to other people. But it's like, you keep stacking up and keep living in this confined masculinity in like, for lack of a better term, the bro culture. It's like, where is that going to lead you in 10, 15, 20 years?
Yeah.
How is that going to help you create more, and I say success, with the little caveat, like success. Yeah, you might have that $1 million house or that $1 million job, but it's like, how is that limiting, your true, again, being emotionally alive in every single situation, and being more emotionally alive is like, how are you going to more deeply connect with other people more emotionally, and what are the conversations, the opportunities, and the things that come forth, right, from just being open and available and have a broader spectrum of emotional awareness for
Right.
yourself, and therefore it just helps everyone else around you.
Emotional awareness, emotional connection, right? A much
There you
deeper
go.
emotional connection with others. And you said the term emotionally alive, and I know that that's what we have in our kind of intro. But if you're not emotionally alive, then you're not alive, right? I mean, you're
Exactly.
missing out on so much that this
Yeah.
life has to offer. If you're
Yeah.
cutting yourself off from this whole list of emotions that we showed before, and you're only exhibiting or allowing yourself to feel only a small portion of that, you are cutting yourself out from truly feeling alive. And some of those emotions are painful. Some of those emotions are scary. Some of those emotions are sad. But if you don't have those, if you don't have the yin and yang, then how are you supposed to feel joy if you don't know what sadness
Yeah.
feels like, right?
Right.
How do you know what light looks like if you don't know what darkness looks like? It's all that
Yeah.
kind of back and forth. So you need to open yourself up to much more of that broad spectrum of emotions that are out there, so that you can more fully experience the other good emotions,
Yeah.
positive
And,
emotions. So yeah, it's
and also
amazing.
be more willing, like with a greater emotional, spectrum of feelings. Like, I'd be more willing, John, to try different things. Because, like, if I, you mentioned joy, and I had this thought of like, well, if I'm kind of in that, in that bro culture, and Lindsay brought up a good point, like, called the no culture, you know what I mean? Just like, just like, no. I can only, so to access joy, if I'm kind of stuck in this confined, masculine way of expressing myself, I'm limiting the way that I am going to express myself. Like, so joy can only be like, watching a football game or something like that, or like, riding in a fast car. And I'm not giving really shitty examples here, John, but I think you could,
I get it.
right. I think you can identify it, just like it's just like, and also that confined masculine. We're so worried about the judgment from other men, right, that are keeping us in that box, right, which prevents us, from being really who we are, which makes us extreme. What happens in that case, again, is that toxic loop. We get more easily angered, frustrated, this and that, because like we are only like a small fraction of our unlimited potential of who we are as human beings.
Right. And I mean, as much as we're kind of dogging the bro network or it's important to still have that
yes, of course.
you have to have that support.
Right.
But hopefully you're able to open that bro networks, their hearts and minds, to feeling more than, again, just the conqueror, provider, and protector. You can have conversations that are very deep with that network, and that's how it's very important to have that. And that kind of that's my segue, if you will, into the importance of the support network.
Yeah.
And obviously we'll continue talking about emotional awareness in this, but the support network. It says here from one of the articles that we read, research has shown that having a social support network can have a positive impact on your overall mental health. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 was a great deal of stress and 1 is little or no stress, a survey found that the average stress level for people with an emotional support network in place was 5 out of 10, compared to 6.3 out of 10 for people without the emotional support network. So having that emotional support network it's not just a great thing to say, but it truly does physically, emotionally, and spiritually help you to feel better. to, again, come back to what we've talked about a lot during this episode, more fully experience this life, have more sense of fulfillment and peace. So that emotional support network is incredibly important. So if you don't have one, work to get one, and we're going to cover ways to get that emotional support network set up. But I've said that term a lot here, but what is a support network? So
please tell us, Jon. Please tell us.
So
I'm excited.
We're not talking about necessarily a support group, like something that's more formal, like maybe AA or some a church group or something. That those are great to have, absolutely. But this is more of an informal support group that you have, your social support network, your friends, your family, your colleagues, and knowing who in that network that you can actually lean on when you need support, that you can be vulnerable with, the people with whom you can be vulnerable. So that support network, and it's more formally defined as a social support network, is made up of friends, family, and peers. It's different from support group, although both support groups and support networks can play an important role in times of stress. A social support network is something you can develop when you're not under stress. So that's the important thing. That's not, you don't want to wait until you're in a point of crisis to go and work on developing your social support, your emotional support network. You want to have that in place prior to, and it's so important to our mental, physical, and spiritual health and wellness, having that support group. Even if you're not in a state of crisis, it helps you to potentially prevent from getting into a state of crisis. So what are your thoughts on support
well,
networks?
I think they've been extremely helpful to me with masterminding, that's like, and I think important elements of support group, Jon, and even if if you're developing your emotional awareness and your emotional literacy, having or working towards being part of or even developing a support network is going to require vulnerability, which comes up with I don't know what to do right now, or I'm not sure exactly how I'm feeling. Yes, I'm feeling, I think it's anger, but is it something else? And it just, having a support group really asks you, to show up fully. And part of showing up fully is sometimes not knowing where you're going to go or where this might lead you, and also taking the risk and having the courage of just putting yourself forward, and again, coming back into being vulnerable. Now, being part of that support group, is going to require, and this is difficult for a lot of people, and I know men sometimes, is just literally actively listening. And also, creating and holding space for people. And I think that's a really big concept. If you don't know exactly what holding space is for, is literally just non-judgmentally listening, being emotionally available to somebody else, and just letting them, dump whatever kind of shit they had for that particular day or whatever crisis they're going through, and really just simply listening and being open and available, like I talked about. And it's something that, in developing and being part of that network, it's an ongoing process as well. Again, we're human beings that are always evolving, and the more we develop more this emotional literacy, and we're going to talk about emotional intelligence as well a little bit deeper here too, you're going to be a better friend, a better boss, you're going to a better person in that support group. And it's not easy, and it's not easy. And I think, how many times do we say vulnerability and compassion in this podcast? I mean, I think at one point you said it's like men talking compassion. It's should be the subtitle for our show, because it requires a lot of compassion as well. So
and you kind of hit on this, but Scott Harris, one of our listeners and viewers, he says, what about men being the fixer, quote unquote fixer, rather than the understander? Seems this could be a key to emotional agility. That is one thing as men or masculine types. A lot of the time, what we try to do is fix things. And me too, 100%. Yeah. But a lot of the time, that's not what even as men, that's not what we need to. We just need somebody to listen. there's a great commercial, and I think I mentioned this on the show before. It's an older commercial about how to listen for men, and it starts behind a couch. It has a man and a woman sitting on the couch together, and the woman's talking about, I'm feeling so much tension. It's really starting to hurt, and it starts to pan. The camera does, and it pans around, and she's got a nail sticking out of her forehead, and the man is looking at it, and he just wants to say, or he does say, he's like, hey, if we just pulled that nail out of your forehead, it would help a lot. And the woman's like, it's not about the nail. I just want you to listen. He's like, but the nail, it's right there. That's all I need to do is pull it out. And that's how we feel. As I think a lot of time as masculine types, masculine energies, is that we want to fix so much. But if we can, as Scott says, learn more to be just the understander, the listener. That's what's so great about these support networks is a lot of the time, even as men, we're not looking for something to be fixed. We're just looking for someone to hear us, to see us. And that's what makes us feel important. That's a basic human need, right? To feel this feeling of importance, a feeling of mattering. And that is why a support group, the formal support group or a support network that you have set up can be so important for you, for your mental, your physical, and your spiritual health and wellness. That all said, I want to get into some of the risks of not having the social support network, or rather, how you can benefit from it. So, says here, studies have demonstrated that social isolation, and this is from the Mayo Clinic's website. Studies have demonstrated that social isolation and loneliness are associated with a greater risk of poor mental health and poor cardiovascular health, as well as other problems. So literally, you are potentially putting yourself at risk of a heart attack or some heart disease by not having a support network in place. Other studies have shown the benefit of a social support network, including the following: improving the ability to cope with stressful situations, which we've talked about, alleviating the physical and emotional effects of distress, promoting lifelong good mental health, enhancing self-esteem, lowering cardiovascular risks, such as lowering blood pressure, promoting healthy lifestyle behaviors, and encouraging adherence to a treatment plan, or that's what it says there in the article, in treatment plan. But what if you're part of a team, right? Maybe a sports team or a physical team or a gym. Having that support network can also help you to stay accountable. That's what you talked about, Will, with your mastermind group, right? That's what's so great about those is it's an accountability group. So sometimes if you're not going to them for venting or something to that effect, you can have them hold you accountable to achieving your goals. Maybe that's what you're going after. And achieving your goals is also a huge part in our mental health. If we are able to set goals and then work towards achieving them, we're going to feel better about ourselves. We're going to look better, quite literally. Maybe it's the gym, maybe it's just eating better, you're going to feel, look, and just be better all around. So there's definitely benefits to having that support network, both in them being listeners and also accountability partners, accountability buddies. So,
and inspirational partners too. Like if I'm with a group of any men and women, a mixed group, and people are, talking about something deep, or one person or a group of people or a couple people in the group are achieving something great. It's like, that's going to help activate me. Because their feelings, again, like our feelings, limbic resonance is another part of, a deeper aspect of like emotional intelligence and emotional awareness. It's like, we're hardwired to one another, complete within our brains. That's this whole that limbic resonance.
Right.
We can pick up on each other's emotional feelings just naturally in our brain. But if we don't develop this emotional literacy, we're not going to be, if we're confined and like have that wall up that is just stacked with the bricks of confined masculine values, right? Nothing is going to really penetrate, right? But if we're more open, right, we can be inspired by other people, right? And a lot of that inspiration is like, it's going to activate us. but inspire us to change, inspire us to get curious, which I think is super important. To maybe look for new ways to succeed, to try different things, to just, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
So that's incredibly, we thrive, Jon. We say it all the time. We thrive as a collective.
Right.
We do.
Yeah.
And
we are all connected.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, whether you're religious or not, at some point there was something that was created, and then that something was split up into what we all are today. I mean, atoms, and James Nestor even talks about this in his book, that we were all part of the same thing at some point. We're all kind of like recycled dust, and the energy in those atoms down to the atomic level is shared. And then coming back to your limbic resonance, kind of mirror neurons, if you've heard of those. That's like literally you walk into a room and you can either build and bring up the room with your energy and your emotions that you're bringing into the room, or you can give into the room and kind of get sucked into whatever their emotions are, or vice versa. But again, the emotional agility, the emotional awareness is key. And in order to have that emotional awareness, one, you have to be, ironically, you have to be brave and strong enough to experience and exhibit these emotions. And then two, I think you need to not only be strong and brave enough to do it, but in a group where you can do it, and the benefit, the group is going to benefit from it. So it's the support network, the support group, if that's a more formal thing that you're a part of, it's incredibly powerful what we can do together. Even like I'm an introvert, right? I'm a huge introvert, pegged ISTJ, I think, on the Myers-Briggs. Yeah, and I'm pegged as far as you can be on the introvert side. But I still value my networks, my friends, my family, my colleagues that I can vent to, that I can go to, and I know they're going to have my back. And we did an episode several weeks back about trust with our buddy Neil Markey. That's all about having somebody's back, and knowing the kind of flip side of that, knowing that, one, they've got your back and you've got theirs, right? That trust, that's huge in this life.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Huge.
No, I was just going to say it's just huge in this life, knowing that we're all in this together, right? It's this big messy life that we were talking about before we hit record on the show. It is a big mess, this thing that we're living, but it is so great knowing that we're in it together.
Well, Jon, and me and you are in this together, right? And the elements of our relationship and the show and what we've built, and it's trust, right? It's being vulnerable. It's like not knowing, just trying new things. And we really, I mean, Jon, God, we talk every single day. I love you dearly, even more every day, just because we're on this adventure together, very much so. And this adventure is not just for our own well-being, but creating a platform and creating an opportunity for people, everybody, not just, men and women, anybody out there, to really learn mindfulness. And if we didn't have all the elements of the support group we talked about, if we didn't have the trust, if we didn't have the emotional literacy, if we didn't have, which comes with tact, also all the things we're talking about, all the emotional literacy, and the support group is just going to develop more self-confidence. And that just makes us more bold to just go forward, kind of fuck what it looks like in some ways, and just boom, let's just see what happens. And here we are, we have the M2 experience coming up. We have t-shirts and all that kind of stuff. We have we're doing retreats out there, and it's all because of the core elements of our relationship, which are, I mean, it's beautiful, Jon. It's really, and I say this, I mean, to you and everyone else hearing it, but I feel emotional right now because of all the beautiful things that, kind of the core elements of Men Talking Mindfulness and our relationship kind of bring forth. And it's beautiful to experience all this. And we're like two, everybody, if you don't know the show, like we're two, I think, very alpha males in the sense of like, we're big, we're strong, like we have, athletic and physical prowess, and, we're not afraid to express how we're feeling or our emotions or our thoughts or ideas. And here we are, like two men that have definitely been in that man box. Like we definitely have been in that bro culture, that no culture kind of thing, and like, because of the work with mindfulness, Jon, I think one of the reasons one of the things we can kind of close with here is, how do we practice, Jon? Like, how do we get, develop that emotional literacy, and then move in, to emotional intelligence. So what are some of those practices that come to mind, or any comments you have about,
obviously Men Talking Mindfulness, would be remiss if we didn't say mindfulness is one of the things that can help with that, right? The emotional literacy, the emotional agility that you mentioned before, that's huge. So I think that's a place to start. And not to sound too salesy, but if you haven't ever meditated before, we'd love to have you join us on that mindfulness and movement experience with MovementRx. Again, we'll put the link in here, but if you have meditated before, share it with your friends, with your family. They may look at you like a weirdo at first, but these are truly life-changing practices. So I also want to talk about, we talked about how to develop emotional awareness, how to develop emotional intelligence, but also how to develop that emotional support network. 5 things that we really have here are: reach out, be vulnerable, be strong, and reach out and ask your family and friends. Just one, offering support, and then so you can be a part of their support network, and then flip side, ask for support if you need it, so they can be a part of yours. Using technology, and I know we've talked about digital detoxes and technology detoxes in the past, but there are great forms, great times for technology. This is one of them. Men Talking Mindfulness wouldn't exist if it weren't for technology. Will and I have never even met in person. We will. It's going to happen. We will. But we haven't even met in person. So, the use of technology, if you don't have friends who are close to you, reach out to them via text, via email, via Zoom calls, whatever. Get that social support, emotional support from your friends. Connecting with people who share your common interests. Join a sports club, join some type of social club, join a drinking club, if that's what fits.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Something that fits.
Soften yourself with the liquor a little bit. Like, no, actually, I'm really sad. Oh no, I'm just kidding.
Sometimes the liquor can help to peel back.
Yeah, exactly. Pull away the veil.
But then look for the peer support networks or peer support groups that are out there already. That maybe it's a Facebook group, maybe it's a formal group where you go and meet folks, and then the last one, which we already mentioned, is be vulnerable, which is being strong enough to ask for help. That is huge to help you mentally, physically, as we talked about. It truly helps physically and then spiritually as well. So I just wanted to make sure we covered that too.
Yeah, well, that's one of the biggest hurdles for men is asking for help. I witnessed it in a men's group that started the forum, and then it all kind of fell apart because of money. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, really? But it was like one of the biggest things that for men and a lot of, men in particular, but a lot of people just ask for help. And when you're asking for help, you're opening yourself to vulnerability. You're saying that, you're showing weakness in some ways, but actually, you can see it as like showing weakness, but it's actually really being vulnerable, and it's very empowering to ask for help. And every time, Jon, that, I've reached out to other people and other men to be like, hey, like I can use some help with this. It's amazing, Jon, like almost instantly just having that ask, they're like, right. Whoa, there's some sort of like trust or feeling or heart opening that happens where, other people that I've asked to help me with, they're like, okay, I can just feel them, like, their mind and their heart saying like, okay, I can go along for that ride.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and it's turned into some of the most beautiful relationships I've had, which is just even deepen my relationship to myself and everyone else around me, because now I have this connection with one person or a group of people that, again, I can develop that self-confidence, and that will help me to want to and develop more of that emotional literacy and that emotional intelligence, which how many times have we talked about how it's not IQ, but it's EQ.
Right.
That helps you become more successful in life, because it's all about people and we're all emotional beings. So you better believe that EQ is incredibly important in order to create success in absolutely anything you want to do. You want to be coach a baseball team or like a little, whatever, great. You want to succeed more at work? Yes. You want to just, have better relationships, and anywhere, that EQ is just going to help just in so many different ways. And it's really going to inspire people around you to develop more of that emotional intelligence, for sure.
100%. And that, we talked about asking for help, and you hit on it again there. But I also want to just, I'll wrap it up with this, is people want to help, right?
Yes.
So if you're afraid of asking for help because you think you're going to get turned down, there are people, you may get turned down. Hey, okay. Yeah. But there are people out there who want to help. So reach out to your friends, your family, your colleagues, whoever. Develop this social and emotional support network for yourself. Mm-hmm. You're going to be better for it. And it all begins with asking for help. So
it's also trying to come back like kind of full circle in some ways of like, if men are typically always trying to provide solutions, you're asking for help, I'd be like, oh, I feel I can help this guy, so, I'm going to read one thing, Jon, and then we'll go to the closing practice.
Right on.
And this will, just to kind of come back to a little bit of more of that emotional literacy, and that last piece of developing emotional literacy is writing things out, right? So instead of, again, objectifying your feelings, getting them, instead of it being a thought, right, actually putting that on a piece of paper. And this comes back to that Harvard Business Review, which I think we dropped into the feed. I hope we did. It's on the sheet here. He goes, moreover, a study of recently laid off workers, he found that those who delved into their feelings of humiliation, anger, anxiety, and relationship difficulties were 3 times more likely to have been reemployed than those in the control group. These experiments also revealed that over time, those who wrote about their feelings began to develop insights into what those feelings meant or did not mean, using phrases like, I have learned, it struck me that, the reason that, I now realize, and I understand, end quotes. The process of writing allowed them to gain a new perspective on their emotions and to understand them and their implications more clearly. The point is that those thoughts are now out of you and on a page. Mm-hmm. So this is, again, another mindfulness practice, another way to develop more of that emotional literacy is, to write things down. And that is that more self-reflection, that is, it's a meditation within itself. And, and since it's just kind of a solo practice, you can really begin to delve deeper and maybe begin to understand that it's like, it's not so scary to dive into your emotions and begin to feel things that are beyond the pale of confined, expressed emotional ways of doing things.
Yeah, 100%, man. Mm-hmm. And the last thing, Lindsay, who is the brains behind our whole operation here, she's our administrative assistant in our private chat. She wrote here, IQ gets you hired, EQ gets you promoted. And mm-hmm. That's key. That's key for success, like we talked about. So, brother, let's wrap it up with our final grounding practice.
Okay. That's me. Let's do that.
That is you.
Okay. Yeah. I know, I'm just kidding.
I love you, brother. I love you.
I love you too, man. We always have so much fun, Jon. And it's like, I thank you for holding this space, Jon, so I can be my ridiculous self, But all right, guys, we're just going to do a few breaths, and then we're just going to actually do a really simple emotional awareness exercise, and then we're going to close. And so again, ground your feet or stop what you're doing, or just get ready to find some breath. So exhale out through your mouth. That's a great way to release some nice stress. A long exhale, right? Good. We're gonna take 2 inhales and then 1 exhale. Right? So exhale, exhale. We're gonna take an inhale, breathe through the nose. Good. Hold that. Take another hit of an inhale through the nose, and exhale out the mouth. Excellent. Good. Let's do it again. Inhale 1. Good. Inhale 2. Exhale out. Good. Let's do one more. Inhale 1. Hold. Inhale 2. Exhale out. Good. And just simply come back to a nice smooth breath. And just be aware of the most predominant feeling you're having right now. Whatever it is, maybe you're feeling more relaxed, more calm. And then see, staying with your breath, can you go a little deeper? I'm feeling more relaxed and more calm because we're kind of finishing the show. But also underneath that, I'm just feeling a sense of joy as well. I'm feeling a greater sense of confidence for having had this experience, had this expression with Jon on the show. So what's underneath that first initial feeling? Can you go a little bit deeper? And it's okay if you don't have that literacy yet. Stay with your breath. Can you go a little bit deeper? What are the feelings under the feelings? And it's okay if you need more work in this area. That's what we're here for. This is the awareness we're trying to create. Great. Let's just finish with 1 breath. Exhale out through the nose. Empty all the way out if you can. Take a big, giant inhale. Filling that torso. More breath, more. Inhale, inhale, inhale. And exhale, whatever feels great. Out the mouth through the nose. Good. Open those eyes when you're ready. Jon, always a pleasure. We can talk about feelings and emotions and literacy and EQ and, how that all helps us to create more success in our lives and support one another, even on a deeper level. So thank you for today. And hey, what I'll say is hey, if you really enjoyed this episode, support the show, take a screenshot, send it out there to the world, just to help us grow and to help us grow as a more responsible society with our feelings.
That's right. So. That's right. Absolutely. And love it. I won't say anything more. So thank you all for being with us today. I'm trying to be emotionally aware, and have a great Labor Day weekend for those who watch live. Otherwise, if you're tuning in on the podcast after Labor Day, we'll see you then. Till then, or next time, take care.
Peace, peace.
Thanks for joining Will and Jon on Men Talking Mindfulness. If you enjoyed the show, please like and share it with your friends and family, and please, we would appreciate a review too. Until next time, this has been Men Talking Mindfulness. Thanks for showing up.